Welcome to the Gold Podcast, news and commentary from Gun Owners Action League, your leading voice for the Massachusetts gun owner.
I'm Jeff. Across the table is Garrett, and joining us remotely from beautiful Hyannis, Massachusetts, chief cook and bottle washer, head honcho, host, media personality,
shop owner, all around great guy. And let me just tell you, he's one of the most attractive men I've ever seen in my life.
I was just going to say extremely good looking.
Toby Leary, Cape Gunworks. How are you, Toby?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks so much for having me on, Garrett and Jeff. It's always a pleasure.
Great having you. So we had you on last year with Mike when we did the wrap up for 4420 after that first came out. But we wanted to get you back on because you got a lot going on. You've been a busy guy, and we did just see you at the Goal office over the weekend. So we did
that was awesome.
Yeah, the Goal annual meeting was just this last Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday, April 7th, Cyprian Keys, 9 to 12.
We had a great turnout. Good food, good people, good time. I thought it came out great.
Raffle was great. The photos, the slideshow, because this is Goal's 50th year.
Yeah.
Phenomenal speakers. Toby, you were one of them.
Toby, that's right. Recognized with an award.
I got an award. That was nice recognition of my tireless service in support of the Second Amendment. And I was a little on the spot. You know, I didn't know I was going to speak, but that's okay. I'm never short for words. So I can be pressed into service. Honestly, what I do is easy because I love what I do. And frankly, there's a little bit of self-preservation mode. Like my family eats off the fact that I sell constitutionally protected products.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, if I wasn't in the business of being a gun owner and a gun retailer, I still feel very strongly that I would be an advocate. I don't know the podcast would have ever started or the radio show would have ever started. But the truth of the matter is, since I was early on in my gun owning days, I've always been what I consider an advocate for 2A causes. It comes very naturally to me, and I feel very strongly about the Second Amendment and all of our enumerated rights. For that matter, I felt like I was receiving an award for something that I was cheating. You know, I was like, oh, this is too easy for me. Like I do
this is what I do anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Well, speaking of taking the easy road, you've built yourself quite a business down there in Hyannis, and we sing its praises on the podcast all the time. I tell everybody that I think it's worth the trip down to the Cape just to go. But maybe you could tell us how Cape Gunworks started, how you guys, built the model and built the business and created the facilities that you have down there.
It's a cool story, in my opinion. I became a Second Amendment guy at the ripe old age of 12 in the Boy Scouts when my scout leader took us shooting, and I was hooked. I was like, this is awesome. I'm going to be a gun guy. Got home, told my parents all about it, and they went, yeah, about those guns. We're not really gun people.
Like guns, really?
Yeah. And so I'm like, come on, Dad, let's go do it. And it wasn't a thing. 14, 15, 16, trying to get a BB gun was a big fat no. I couldn't even get a BB gun.
Oh, you came from one of those houses.
So I had to wait.
You'll put your eye out, kid.
Yes.
Yeah, right. You'll shoot your eye out.
And you know what? In all fairness, it was probably a pretty good call by my parents. Like, I'm a risk taker by nature. So, I probably would have been like on the rooftop trying to snipe birds in the neighbor's yard with my pellet gun had I had one at 14. So they might have used good judgment. I'm just saying. But anyway, when I was 18, I had already taken my license to carry certification class. And I was down at the Dennis Police Department on my birthday.
Nice.
With my application fully filled out, check for $100, certificate stapled, 3 references, every hoop you had to jump through in order to exercise your right to keep and bear arms in Massachusetts. And I submitted it, and I could see the look on their eyes like, oh, we got a live one here. And they were right. And so I went in the next week, like, did my license come in? They're like, no, kid, your license didn't come in. So I'm like, all right, I'll see you next week. And they're like, no, we'll call you. And I'm like, well, state law says 40 days. 40 days, time's ticking here, fellas. And so after a few weeks, they're like, we'll call you, because I kept calling. Did it come? Did it come? Well, lo and behold, months went by, and months turned to 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Finally, I went in and I was like, I'm done being nice. I go in, I go, guys, it has been 6 months. What the heck? Finally, the guy opens a drawer, pulls out an envelope with my name on it, and hands it over and kind of holds onto it as I'm trying to tug it out of his hand. And he's, don't screw it up. That was it. And they issued it for target and hunting. And I said, finally, but what it said to me was, we didn't want to give you this.
Yeah.
And we were hoping you would just go away. And when you didn't go away, we know we have to give it to you, but
we don't have to make it easy. Yeah. Yeah. We don't have to make it easy.
Gotta stick it to you a little bit.
At the time, I was really upset at the process to begin with. I said, how is this a right? This feels a whole lot more like a privilege. Like, I have to fill out paperwork, get fingerprinted, get photographed, get background check, provide references. Mm-hmm. I had to give a reason for why I wanted my license to carry. I had to submit myself to something that I didn't have to do for any other right to be exercised. And I felt like something was seriously off with that process. And meanwhile, a lot of the people in the industry are like, it's Massachusetts. That's what you got to do in Massachusetts. And I'm thinking, why does Massachusetts get to stomp on my rights?
Yeah, exactly.
That's not an answer. I don't like that. That's not an answer. So
that's the way it's done here is never a good answer.
Right. That's not a thing. Just because you stomp all over my rights and you tread all over my rights doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's the way it was set up to be, right? By our founders. And I just felt like the whole process was very wrong. And there was I remember in my layman's view of law was like, why don't we get some rich billionaire Second Amendment guy who's like a gun owner in this state to sue them into oblivion? Like, how is it that this can be a thing?
How hard can it be?
We're in 1993, for crying out loud. How has this not been challenged? And everyone's looking at me like, are you stupid? Like, you're just dumb. Like, they can do this. And I'm like, why can they do it? No one could ever explain to me intelligently why the state of Massachusetts got away with this type of restriction on an enumerated right. And again, I was a very lay person when it came to American history and American jurisprudence and American laws and constitution. I had a technical high school education. Mm-hmm. That was the extent of it. But I knew innate in my body something was seriously wrong with this. And that, I would say, is what activated me. The very process that I went through upset me, it enraged me, and I would say it activated me into what I consider myself now as an advocate for Second Amendment rights. And it wasn't until Heller, when I finally started to get some confirmation that my instinctive experience was correct. When the Supreme Court ruled that guns that are in common and ordinary use can't be banned. And you can't ban an entire category of guns, stuff like that. I'm like, yeah,
right.
I'm like, what took you so long? Isn't this... The Bill of Rights says we hold these truths to be self-evident.
That's right.
I'm sorry, the Declaration of Independence, right?
That's right.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, which means it's obvious to everybody who has a brain that there are certain unalienable, you can't put attachments, you can't put conditions, you can't lean these rights, and they're granted by our Creator. And among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, how do you have life if you can't defend it? Mm-hmm. That, I think, comes to the very nature of the Second Amendment is an acknowledgement that all people are born with the right to defend themselves against A, the criminal element, or B, tyrannical government. That is just a basic human right. Otherwise, they can impose their will on you and take your life. Then I don't have a right to life if they can take it, right? I know this is very theoretical.
But that was the philosophy and the thought exercise that the founding fathers were going through.
Exactly. Right. These thoughts that you're talking about now are what they were thinking at the time.
Ironically, on Sunday when I was driving up to the Goal 50th anniversary meeting, I was listening to the Federalist Papers, and I'm trying to go through them all like in consecutive order.
Oh, wow.
And
that's an undertaking.
It's fun, though. It's really exciting because it was trying to drop into the mindset of our founding fathers at that time, right? And there was two schools of thought at that time. One is states' rights and 13 different independent authorities or republics or whatever with their own independent sets of laws and whatever. And then there was the Federalists that wanted to see a united states, right? And so for the protection of the continent and the protection of the country and whatnot. And ultimately they won out. But the reasoning behind it, and it just really solidifies in my mind how intelligent and how painstakingly thorough that our founding fathers were in the drafting of those documents, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And at first, I believe James Madison, who is the author of the Constitution and the architect of it, basically, originally was against having a Bill of Rights. It was unnecessary. Like, rights are granted by God, and it's axiomatic. It is self-evident to all of those paying attention, right? You don't need to acknowledge the rights that God gives you because God gave them to us and they're here. But there was some resistance, like people thought it necessary to actually write it down because of human nature and tyrannical governments. And tyranny is that, oh, I have ultimate power and you are my subject. And the foundations of our government were, no, we're going to grant the power to the people. We're going to send representatives to do the bidding of us on a federal government.
Right, through the consent of the governed.
Local government. Right. And so it really was like amazing to see the thought processes and even the disagreements between the founding fathers that were allies, and then some of the conflicts that came about and how they resolved those. And ultimately, James Madison did acquiesce and as part of a bargaining chip agreed to implement a Bill of Rights, which enumerated certain things that should never be touched, other than certain restrictions and infringements for certain reasons that were explained, or there was historical tradition or analogs, right?
And after due process of law.
Exactly, yeah. Now we see people who are elected. And I did an open letter. I don't know if you guys saw it or not.
I saw it. I saw it. Wanted to talk about that too, because that.
But the whole point of that was in those Federalist Papers. One of the things that jumped off the page to me was when Madison wrote about constitutional limitations. It says right there that there are limits to the legislator's power or authority, and that there's limits to their constitutional powers, right? And so I had a visit by a couple of senators here, state senators, that wanted to learn about firearms. They really didn't know. They had both voted in favor of the Senate Bill 2584.
Of course.
And then they wanted to figure out what the heck they voted for. Right? So,
it's like you guys got that backward,
Yeah, exactly. So they came to my shop, and I will tip my hat to them and say that they spent a few hours on a holiday to come in and hear me speak for 2 or 3 hours. I gave them a tour of the facility, went through gunsmithing. We went through assault weapons and, all the evil features. We went through the whole thing, right?
Yeah. Right.
And at one point I finally said, guys, let's cut to the chase. Could you, if you can gain enough support in the House and the Senate, if you have majority support, let's even say super majority support can you ban Catholics? And they kind of looked at me strange, like, no, we couldn't ban Catholics. No. I said, exactly. You are acknowledging your constitutional limitations right now. That's exactly what you just did. You acknowledged there's limitations.
That's right.
To your authority constitutionally.
Your power is not, yes, right,
an
exactly.
entire religion, right? The same goes for firearms. You cannot ban firearms that are bearable and that are in common and ordinary use. Period. Full stop. If you do, it is an abuse of power because you lack the constitutional authority to do so. And they're like, well, no right is absolute.
Oh, you start with that.
You can't yell fire in a crowded building. And I said,
well,
actually, the rights are absolute. Like that's the most god-awful argument I've ever heard of.
Right.
Well, no right is absolute. Well, if the right isn't absolute, then it's not a right.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's take that bit off the table, off the top.
Yeah, of course. It's nonsense.
It's not a right.
Exactly.
It's a privilege. And so, the argument has always been, prior to Heller, prior to Bruin, a interest balancing approach to gun law. Yeah. And it's funny because there's no interest balancing approach to the Fifth Amendment,
right?
To the Fourth Amendment, or to the First Amendment, right?
Right.
There's always strict scrutiny of enumerated rights, and it should be that way.
Yeah, by design. By design.
Right. And except for the Second Amendment, we've seen decades of court decisions that have upheld, and Massachusetts is probably the Mount Rushmore, or that's a bad example because of freedom. It's the Mount Kilimanjaro of bad case law against gun owners and guns in the state.
Yeah.
And so we have decades of district court and First Circuit Court of Appeals opinions or decisions that have upheld that interest balancing approach. Mm-hmm. We saw challenges to the approved weapons rosters upheld twice in district court, and a third attempt to challenge it by Firearms Policy Coalition was dismissed. And then after Bruin, they reintroduced it and said, hey, in light of some new way of looking at Second Amendment stuff, which isn't really new because Heller said the same thing, you have to take this case. And the First Circuit, who is not a friendly gun
not at all
court, said to the district court, guys, you've got to take the case. And so we're starting to see a shift, which is good. But the argument under the interest balancing approach has always been, hey, we're not restricting your right to keep and bear arms. You can have other guns.
Yeah, right.
You can have a single shot shotgun. You can have a revolver. You can have a pump.
Right. You have the right to keep and bear arms. You can have a single shot shotgun stored in pieces in a safe. So there you go. You have your Second Amendment rights.
Exactly. And you just can't have those guns. But we're not infringing on your rights. Well, what you just did is ban Catholics under the Second Amendment.
You can be other religions. You just can't be one of the Christian ones.
Be a Muslim.
Or you can't be a Muslim. Or you can't
you can be a moon guy, whatever the heck he was.
Oh, the moonies.
Whatever you want. You just can't be Catholic. And, it takes a little bit of, maybe a tiny bit of courage, but not really. I don't care what people think of me. B, it takes a little bit of creativity in thinking to be able to bring out that in people who aren't typically gun people, because that's really where our advocacy lies. We're never going to need to convince the,
right. We're not,
the Garretts and the Jeffs and the Tobys and the
Garrett, Jeff, and Toby are pretty solidly in the right camp here. And people like, the Bloomberg and the Healey's and the the Giffords, they're never going to be in this camp. So
right.
It's the people in the middle that we need
to.
It's
the middle.
Right.
It's the middle.
The independent voter.
Who maybe not be gun owners that might be somewhat sympathetic to the cause, but think there should be some restrictions or whatever camp it is. It might be people who've never even thought about owning a gun. And we saw a lot of those people come to the fold in the last 2 or 3 years, right? When civil unrest.
Oh, yeah, sure. Training exploded.
Oh, yeah. I know a guy who put a pool in his backyard, straight cash. Like, here's a bag of money.
Yeah, and
so,
we, we're doing classes and asking those questions, and people are like, it's getting crazy out there. I feel like I want to be.
I was getting phone calls from friends that were not necessarily pro-gun people asking if they could perhaps borrow a firearm if things were going a little bit.
No, you can't.
Off, and
but
had to say, hey, the way you voted for the last decade,
that's right,
means I can't do that.
The answer is no, but I can hook you up with somebody who can help.
But I know a guy. I got a gun guy.
And imagine that. Like, if you had a legitimate threat in your life or I get calls all the time from someone who has some guy in the neighborhood lurking around, staring in windows and stuff. And all of a sudden people are like, oh my God, I need a gun. It's like, you're 3 months away from that.
Yeah, I can't help you. I can't help you. And the reason I can't help you is because of all of the policies you've been voting for.
Yeah, in a good year, 3 months.
Yeah.
If everything goes smooth, 3 months. Yeah.
So,
but that passion for the Second Amendment, that passion for liberty, and for what firearms represents, that seems to have informed and shaped how you have built your business.
Yeah. So I know that was a long answer to the original question of what got you into guns, or what.
It's a great answer.
And so when I was 18, I was framing houses, working with a guy who was a kitchen table FFL dealer. And he kind of fostered my love of guns as well. Would go to the range after work, shoot, and he had a big collection, and he'd order a gun for me here or there. And we'd be driving around from job site to job site, and all of a sudden I'd see a building vacant. I'd say, hey, why don't we rent that building? We'll do a gun store. And when I was 16, I think 15, 16, we went down to Florida, and I saw this gun shop down there that had a range in the back. And I'm like, this is brilliant. And all attached together.
It's one-stop shopping.
One-stop shopping. And so I said to my friend and coworker, I'm like, why don't we do that? And he's like, are you nuts? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, this is Massachusetts. We don't do that in Massachusetts. And I said, why?
We don't do that here.
It's exactly why you should do it here.
Exactly.
Yeah. And he goes, you could never do that in Massachusetts. I'm like, here we go.
Oh, here we go.
You just had to say you can't do it. Right?
Just poked at you.
It's like, man.
Yeah. And so that was in the back of my mind, kind of rattling around through my career as a builder and carpenter and woodworker. And then right after Sandy Hook, actually, my friend at the time, a really good friend, one of my best friends, Brendan, and I did a trip out to Front Sight in outside of Vegas. And we did a 2-day handgun class, and we were really impressed with the way the place was run. It's now something else. I don't know the name now, but we did that. And now looking back, I'm like, man, the class I took wasn't actually that good, but I was really impressed at the time. And but the what it did was it really stimulated. It got the creative juices flowing on the plane. Coming back, we pulled out the notebook and we started penning to paper what that type of facility would look like in Massachusetts. And I'm like, we really need to do something here. This is now or never. We're not getting any younger. And Massachusetts needs this business model that's been proven in other areas like Texas and Florida and Georgia and down south where it works every time it's tried, right? But I'm like, there's nothing up here in the Northeast. Like, let's do it. Why not? And we'll do it on Cape Cod, which is like a dead end street.
which is like we're gonna take the impossible and knock it up just another notch, just to make it a little bit harder.
Right.
Let's do it on the Cape. Yeah.
But we said it'll be our flagship location, and if it works, we could always duplicate it, and we will, hopefully someday. And that would be a good place to start. And we're not going to drive an hour to see if it works or not. And
do it close to home. Sure.
Right. Do it close to home where we live and work anyway. Failure wasn't really an option, because if it didn't work out, I told my wife, if this doesn't work, hon, we'll be living with your parents. It's like with our 3 kids, because I put everything on the line. And when we first opened the shop, before we opened the shop, we applied for our FFL, and then we tried to sell this dream to a bank. We go in, like, we're going to do a state-of-the-art indoor range, retail, and training facility. It's going to be awesome. we need this so bad in this area. And the banker's looking at me like, okay, kid,
Yeah, the banker's like, we don't do that here.
Well, a lot of them did say that. And then they also said, okay, what are your projected sales? And we're like, we're going to make millions, and they're like, okay.
We're going to change the world.
How are you going to do that? And how many shooters do you have? How many customers do you have? We don't have any customers because we haven't even opened yet. And but we have dreams. And they're like, all right, go sell your dream to somebody else. Good luck. And so we realized that was a little bit much to bite off all in one fell swoop. So we decided to open a little mom and pop gun store. And it was kind of funny because the first iteration of that was actually in my woodworking shop. We had a door under the stairs that was my FFL. That was where the FFL was. The ATF inspected the lock and said, all right, you're good to go. And so the door under the stairs going upstairs, it was this triangle room with some shelving. And to this day, I actually showed someone today. It's kind of funny. I was giving them a tour of that facility. And I said, look at this. I opened the door and on the shelving, it says 9mm, 40, 45, 380, 38 special.
It's a relic.
Like, and I just used to lean the guns against the wall because I only had like 3 or 4 at a time. And then the bank in front of us opened up and we decided to rent it. And we opened Cape Gunworks retail instead of by appointment only about 30 days later. So we got our FFL changed to that location. And so there we were. So we really established a customer base and sold the dream to our customers. And we said, this is what we're going to do. We had this conceptual plan on the back wall. So as we got a couple of years down the road, we started to sell pre-sold memberships. And I remember listening to Brendan one day trying to sell this guy on a membership. He's like, yeah, we're going to be building this and blah, blah, blah. And the guy's looking at him like he's crazy. And he goes, and what happens if you don't open? And Brendan's like, you're out $300, but you know what? I'm out everything. And the guy goes, take my money.
Nice. That's nice. So, well done. Yeah, well done.
And it's true. It was true. Like we had no plan B. Like this doesn't work. We just jumped out of a plane with no parachute, period. And so sometimes
you got to do it though. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to do it. And so anyway, here we are. We just celebrated our 7th anniversary in the new location.
Nice.
And this July 5th will be our 10th anniversary
as a business. Nice. Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, man, that the facility down there is second to none. And I've been to a fair number of gun stores here and elsewhere, and it's like right up there. When I walked in there, I was blown away for the first time. Just amazing what you guys have done down that place.
Well, I thank you for that. The business plan of the shop was really to take gun stores to the next level and really into the future. Because if you think about it, if we were a restaurant, we have a high barrier to entry. It's not easy to open a gun store.
Oh, yeah.
So as a result, like you can kind of get away with bad customer service, with bad cleanliness, with bad SOPs, and that
shelves
type of
and
thing.
shelves of dusty Uncle Mike's holsters. And...
Right. So you can, and it's like you don't like it, take a hike.
Yeah,
that was
you kind of can.
That was Gun Store America for decades.
Yes,
right?
It was.
You walk in, you walk through the cobwebs, and
it's still a lot of them.
It's still. I listen. I'm not gonna crap on anybody for taking a step and doing the entrepreneur thing, but I have been in some sketchy gun stores too.
And
it's unfortunate.
And frankly, we want to elevate this industry, and really, it's the only way to do that is to raise the bar and let others follow suit. We're not trying to put other gun stores out of business. For instance, I went into a gun shop once, and a guy tells me, "Hey, good news." I'm like, what? And he goes, so-and-so went out of business. I'm thinking,
that's not good news. That sucks.
That's terrible news. And he's thinking more of a piece of the pie for me. And I'm thinking, that's terrible for the Second Amendment. That's terrible for the residents of Massachusetts.
Exactly.
That's terrible for, my goal is not to put anyone out of business. It's more to challenge and say, hey, if if a good restaurant opens up across the street from a bad restaurant, the good restaurant's going to do really well.
Yep.
The bad restaurant can change or go do something else, right?
Right.
That's the way it works.
Yeah.
And if I ever fail to meet the burden that my customers deserve, I get to go home and do something else. That's really the benefit of what I do, right?
Yeah.
If I don't do it well, I get to go do something else. And that's the way I feel. And that's been the challenge. And that's been the mantra around Cape Gunworks for all of our employees. I get a lot of people that write us weekly and say, man, you got the best staff I've ever seen. And the truth of the matter is we do. But the only reason for that is they've caught that vision of, being exceptional at their job and not being satisfied with just being mediocre. Like if we don't offer good customer service, if we don't offer good product, if we don't have a nice, clean, well-lit environment, how do we grow this thing?
Right.
It's not going to be by being a good old boys club.
How do you set that bar so high?
And, that's something that we can't get complacent with. At some point, you got to be, if you're not advancing, you're kind of sitting there and probably.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Right? Oh, yeah.
Yep. The ride to the top and staying on the top are two very different challenges.
That's right.
Yeah.
Always somebody willing to knock you off of the top perch.
Absolutely. And should, frankly.
You're sure, yeah.
That should be the friendly competitiveness to our industry.
That's how that works.
And, I'm not saying we've arrived. We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of challenges. We fall short. And when we do, we try to make it right. We say, hey, we're human here. We try our best, man. Sometimes our best isn't good enough. Through this experience, we've learned how we could have done better. And so help us. Thanks for bearing with us.
Well, so the fact that you recognize that and you're not resting on laurels and you're saying, we may have the best gun shop or the most square footage or the brightest lights or whatever, but there's always room for growth and there's always room for improvement. The place that you do have, what do you 20,000 square feet? Something like that?
Yeah, we're 20,000 square feet, including our classroom, our pro
huge
shop.
Classroom, huge pro shop.
And our range, we have 15 lanes.
15 lanes out there? I haven't been in your ranges yet. I've just been in the classroom and the pro shop.
Yeah, we have 2 bays. So one bay has 8 lanes. The other one is 7. So like this weekend, we have 2 days of classes with Rob Pincus on the Personal Defense Network training tour.
Nice.
So he's made it an annual stop for 7 years straight as part of the PDN training tour. So we're really excited about that. And so he'll be here for our 7th anniversary celebrations and teaching a 2-day class. And so while he's teaching a class, we can still have 7 or 8 lanes open to the public to shoot in.
That's awesome.
We don't have to completely shut down the facility. And that was by design. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So we wanted to have 2 separate lanes.
And you got a pretty decent little gunsmithing shop in there too, right? Very nice.
Yeah, our gunsmithing shop has really taken on a whole new level of efficiency, and I would say we're in really good shape right now as far as that's concerned. Obviously, can do a lot, but we just added our 2nd gunsmith. It used to be 1 gunsmith full time.
Nice.
And now we just added a part-time gunsmith as well. So, it's funny because, and this is funny, peculiar, not funny, ha. The way things are in Massachusetts, I would say 50%, maybe not quite that high, at least 40% of all of my gunsmiths' paid time is doing compliance work, just so that I can sell them in my shop. Pinning and welding,
stock, weld the brake,
and welding, stocks. Making sure that there's no ability to adjust the stock for comfort of different shooters. And so
grind off the bayonet lug so that people can't stab each other with their rifles. Yeah.
So, and think of the inefficiency, if you will, of that. Every gun that I sell that comes to me with those quote unquote evil features that I end up milling off is just a waste of time, effort, and energy. Not to mention unconstitutional, but we do it so that we can do it. And I would much rather that gunsmith be working on somebody's, heirloom or doing a gun cloning.
Yeah, right. Doing repair, doing modifications for precision long-range shooting, doing stuff like that, right? Yeah, instead of this nonsense cosmetic work that the state requires.
Yeah.
Now, Toby, with this latest round of legislation that's come out, you've been one of the more vocal advocates and against it, and have even gone on the record saying that if they push these new laws through, that your business is going to be so heavily impacted that you can't comply with the law. Mm-hmm. And because you can't comply with the law, there's no point in even trying, really. How has there been the response to taking that position, and what do you think that means for the business of Cape Gun Works?
I was actually kind of blown away that I got the response I did at the Goal rally in Quincy.
Well, you know,
that's
to be
what
fair,
we're talking about. You brought the room down on that one.
You've delivered a couple barn burners, man.
Yeah, and I was actually pretty like, whoa, what the heck's going on right now? I didn't see that coming. But so I just explained what the gunsmith goes through to be able to sell guns in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. Right? I have always taken the position that I will do whatever I can lawfully do, even if the laws are unconstitutional. I will comply with them until they're rendered unconstitutional.
Right. You go along to get along.
I go along to get along because I think it's more important that I'm in the game and I'm just right. I could have a long time ago said, these are unconstitutional, and I could be selling guns with bayonet lugs and folding collapsible stocks and every quote unquote evil feature. And I would have lasted in business for about a year. Instead of us celebrating our 7th anniversary, I'd be, 6 years behind bars right now.
Right.
So if I can stay in business, be effective, and be an advocate and be a voice for change, all the while pushing right up to the line where I can say I can solidly stand on the fact that you can't come and get me because I'm abiding by your unconstitutional laws.
Yeah.
And again, I use an asterisk there that those laws are unconstitutional.
Yep. But this is like different.
When 4420 was first introduced, that made that impossible. The original bill that was introduced by Michael Day would have made it so that I could not comply and have this viable business that we have labored on and pledged everything to do. Mm-hmm. It would have made it unsustainable. There's no way that our customer base could have possibly supported us with the guns and services that we could have offered. And I had people coming up to me, oh, you can make a business out of serializing magazines. I'm like, dude.
No, you really can't.
That's gross.
No. This is the line in the sand moment, okay? Yeah. I can't begin to speculate what the final version of the bill is going to be. I've tried not to because I get calls and questions every single day.
Yeah, right. So what's going to happen?
Am I going to have to move to New Hampshire?
Right. Is this going to make my pre-ban legal, or is it? Yeah.
Right.
We have no idea. No idea, folks.
And if I buy this gun today, am I going to have to turn it in if it passes?
No. Compliance is voluntary.
You are getting this all wrong.
Yeah.
And frankly, you're scaring me that you would even entertain turning anything in. Like that to me is...
Why is that where your mind goes?
And then I've had people who say, well, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a whatever. I'm a professional that if I have any type of criminal activity on my record, I will lose my professional license.
Sure, yeah.
So there are people that are really in this conundrum. I've had doctors and lawyers especially both come to me and say, I need to get my guns out of this state now. And I'm like, look, don't do anything right now. Stop panicking.
Right.
That's the biggest thing is stop panicking. If the day comes where I can no longer comply with your unconstitutional laws in the hopes that a better day is on the horizon and still make a living in the process, then 100% I am willing to say that was the line in the sand. You know what? I'm not going to even pretend or try to comply with your unconstitutional laws any longer. Frankly, that brings up 2 possible scenarios. Maybe more, but I've only thought of 2. One is being sneaky and just saying, oh, I'm not compliant and they're not going to see what I have and it's all locked deep away.
Yeah.
And then the other is open and visible defiance. You can arrest me, you can throw me in jail, but history will show that you are on the wrong side of it. Not
Time
me.
to be the test case. Time to be the test case.
And I don't recommend that. I have a lot of people that say, oh, I'll be the test case. No,
you don't want to do that.
Don't be the test case. I can do more good by being in the game on this side of the bars than I can on the other side of the bars.
Right. Yeah.
However, if the day comes when it's impossible to comply, 600,000 people need to have a unified voice that says, come and take it.
Yeah, there's always this thinly veiled threat that like they're going to come for you. They're going to come for you. Mm-hmm. And frankly, it's like, well, if they're bluffing, sooner or later, someone's got to call that bluff and say, all right.
Yeah, sooner or later.
Are you really going to stand on this? Because we always see that, you know, that was the Healy thing. Well, we're changing the law, but we promise we won't come after you. Well, we won't prosecute anybody. And you hear it all the time. And particularly from the law enforcement side. Oh, no cop's going to enforce this. Nobody's going to nobody's jamming you up over magazines. But you see it in the newspaper sometimes that, you know, oh, so-and-so with the unregistered firearm. They are the arsenal that's like 2 22s and 500 rounds.
Right.
But
his grandfather's goose gun. It's you know.
But at some point, you know, the two kids on the block have to square up and go, are you serious about your position? Because I'm serious about mine.
It won't be 600,000. It'll be 6,000. Yeah. It'll be 5,000. You know, it'll be 2,000, 3,000. We'll actually say stack up and try. But I'm okay with that.
Well,
like, if that
number follows through, that's still a lot. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You know, what you just said, Jeff, I find it almost hysterical when people say no law enforcement will ever comply with that and go door to door. That is almost laughable. There's gun owners that would rat you out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So the fact, I don't want to rely on the fact that, oh, no cop is going to go door to door. I don't buy that. Frankly, I hope that 99% of them wouldn't. But
well, sure, you would hope not. But then again, you know.
Well, when we do the legal talk in classes, one of the things that I try to stress to students is never bet your freedom on a cop being cool. Yeah. Because they have a mortgage to pay too. And they have kids that need braces and college educations and everything else. So
retirement pensions and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Is that person going to put their livelihood on the line to be cool with whatever you're trying to do? Yeah. That's a very big risk to take.
It's a big ask.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be an open defiance of unconstitutional laws that will ultimately get the attention. But I personally think that the Supreme Court will get involved before it comes to that.
Oh, I hope so.
I'm hopeful. We have four assault weapons ban cases before the Supreme Court right now that are petitioning the court for cert.
Yep.
And
well, there's a couple of cases that currently have cert that have been listened to. There's a couple of them that I don't like so much, but hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I think an assault weapons ban case specifically, I don't think they've heard any oral arguments on that
not yet.
At the Supreme Court, but there's 4 that I know of. Mm-hmm. 3 out of the 7th Circuit in Illinois, and 1 out of the 5th Circuit. Is it the 5th or the 4th? I can never remember. It might even be the 3rd in Maryland. The Bianchi case is. But the nice thing about the Bianchi case is it's had final judgment already. So the other 3 have not. Those would be interlocutory cases that are being sought before the Supreme Court. So the Bianchi one is kind of packaged up, ready to go. And it was already GVR'd during the Bruin case.
Right,
so
after
the Bruin case.
Yep.
So that case is the one that seems right to be heard.
Kind of on deck. Yeah.
That's really the hope. You know, and I heard Jim Wallace talk about it on Sunday that, like, you can't just put all your hope in the courts. We need to make sure this thing doesn't come to fruition.
Right.
Which is why I wrote the open letter that I wrote the other day, because I don't want to rely on the courts anymore. I'm kind of done doing that. Although we've had.
You can't. If this stuff gets passed, we have to live with it for years.
We had the Warman v. Healy case in this state go all the way to the Supreme Court. And
just to have them say no, not hearing it.
Right.
So thanks for your money. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
But
enjoy that precedence.
No soup for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to switch gears a little bit. You have, so not only are you owner of a gun store, hell of a 2A advocate. So you are also, you run a podcast out of Cape Gun Works, but you also do some radio hosting. Tell us all about that.
Yeah. So what started when we were shut down as a gun store during, I don't know if I want to use the words because I don't want to get it pulled off whatever platform this ends up going on.
Get us deep.
We had a health crisis or something going on, and they locked us out of our own store, said you can't operate. So when we were sitting there, like, what do we do today? I didn't lay a single person off during that time.
Ah, bless you, man. That was good.
And we fired up a website like overnight, and the phone was ringing off the hook. And half the time it was people like, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know. So we started doing live broadcasts on like Facebook and YouTube. And so sometimes I'd go talk for 3 or 4 hours, and I'd just listen and look at the chat, and people would ask questions and I'd just answer them. So I'm like, oh, this is kind of something people want. Now everyone's sitting at home wondering why they can't go to Cape Gun Works and buy a gun or go shoot. So it was kind of fishing in a barrel, if you ask me, for content and for people to participate.
Sometimes they just write themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but we found that people were enjoying the content. And so I'm like, okay, well, we're back open now. We sued the state and won in federal court. And so we can open, albeit we were under certain restrictions. And we mentioned 20,000 square feet. I was allowed to have 4 customers per hour after we were allowed to reopen.
Oh my God.
20,000 square feet. That's 5,000 square feet per person, you know.
With a time restriction too. Like if someone comes in for 5 minutes, buys their thing and leaves, hey,
sorry,
you get to hang out for another 55 minutes.
4 per hour. 4 per hour. Yep.
You know what? I hope that history really judges these idiots harshly. Oh my God.
So
anyway,
when we were back open, the decision was, well, do we keep this going? Like I was doing it daily, but now all of a sudden I didn't have time to do it daily. So I'm like, oh, I could probably do it once a week. So we launched RapidFire, like a podcast. And then I was able to buy some airtime on local radio. And we started off on 1 station, and then we broadcast on 3 pretty soon after that. And then we were in 3 different states soon after that. So we were in Massachusetts, Florida, and Arizona.
Nice.
So that went on for the better part of a year when we realized airtime's very expensive. So let's back this down a little bit and just do the online podcast. Internet's pretty free these days compared to airtime on a radio station. So we continued to do it as a podcast. And we were only at one point on 1 station, WCRN out in Worcester, AM 530, which we're still on. But then this year, we kind of got the bug to do local radio again. So I'm now on Sundays from noon to 1 on WXDK 95.1. Oh, but I should mention, way back when we first started out, I made the fateful decision to ask Howie Carr to come on my show. And it was a lot of fun. We had a great hour with him, or actually it wasn't even an hour. I think he was on for 15 or 20 minutes. And he told a bunch of stories about when, like, you know, Kevin Weeks was trying to blow him up with C4 explosives because of his, you know, writing about the Winter Hill Gang and all that stuff. So we told some stories. It was fun. But one thing that was cool is, as a result, he was like, wow, Toby can actually, you know, do a radio show. So they asked me to cover for him for an hour on his you know,
nice
syndicated broadcast, which was huge. I was like, oh my gosh, the big leagues. And I sat in his chair and I just had a ball doing it, and we had fun. And then they asked me to do a 3-hour show and a 4-hour show. And then I filled in a couple days. And then we started doing a regular segment once Grace Curley, his producer, came out with her own show in the noon to 3 Boston, you know, on WRKO. So every Tuesday we do something called 2A Tuesday on the Grace Curley show from 2:20 to 2:45. We take a bunch of phone calls on the air, and it's turned into one of the most popular segments on her show.
Awesome.
And I used to say this to local radio guys. I'd say, people like to talk about guns. Whether you're for them, against them, or indifferent, they like gun talk and gun content. And there's a lot to be covered in that.
Sure.
Like, you should have me on once a month and we can take some calls and answer questions. And people are like, but they took me up on it. Actually, it was their idea. They're like, every time Toby's on the air, the phones light up. So let's do this.
There you go.
So I don't believe it was me per se. I think people like the subject, and there's a shortage of that type of talk radio on the air.
Right, because
There's
it's
only
so
a couple
taboo. People are like,
stations.
you can't talk about that stuff. And yeah.
Right. Just like you can't open a gun shop in Massachusetts. You can't talk about guns on the radio. So I've been able to sit in as a guest host, and I've also done my own radio show and all that stuff. So it's fun.
Cool, man. That is freaking awesome.
And now I'm going to complete the trifecta.
What do you got now?
On the Howie Carr show or Grace Curley show, whenever I fill in, we got to talk politics, right?
Yeah.
I do my own show about guns.
Yeah.
What's the only other forbidden taboo subject that you don't talk about at Thanksgiving?
It's got to be religion, right?
Religion. So now I want to do a religious podcast.
There you go.
Where I can just complete the trifecta. We'll talk
So
God,
you can
guns, and politics.
offend the maximum number of people across all.
It will be an equal opportunity offender, and but I'm working on that idea. So who knows what the future holds? But
Right on.
I've teased that out a couple times, and people are like, "Oh, that could be interesting." But
Well, you have got your fingers in an awful lot of pies. I don't know how you make time for it all between, doing the media, running the gun shop, blowing the roof off of 2A rallies. You've certainly got your hands full. You get any time? What do you do when you're not doing any of that stuff? You hunt?
I hunt. I fish a little bit. I like to travel, believe it or not, although I don't do as much as I used to. I play hockey. My kids play hockey. We do a lot of fun activities as a family, go out on a boat, and swim, and jump off high things into bodies of water and stuff like that. And
jump off all structures.
Yeah, we cliff jump and jump off bridges and stuff like that. It's fun. Yeah, we're adrenaline junkies, the whole Leary family.
I guess
except my wife. She's the only one with a head on her shoulders.
Well, someone's got to keep it in check.
Right. She's the smart one.
Someone's going to be there to collect the insurance check.
Oh, man.
But so yeah, we live life to the fullest. We have a great time doing it, and I feel like I have a full life that's I don't know, no regrets, and made plenty of mistakes along the way, but get up and lick my wounds and keep putting one foot in front of the other.
There you go.
A friend of mine said it best years ago. He says, you just got to get up every day and kick the ball up the hill. And that's what we do, especially in Massachusetts, right?
There you go. Keep kicking the ball up the hill.
Well, Toby, you used the...
Someday it'll run down the other side.
Yep. Well, you used the reference of a restaurant earlier, and I pulled it up real quick on my computer. That's, the whole Michelin star thing. And they say a 1-star restaurant's a very good restaurant. 2 stars means it's worth a detour, and 3 stars means it's exceptional and worth a special trip. So if we had to give Cape Gunworks a Michelin star restaurant rating, I'd say it's a 3-star facility you guys got down there.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely worth the trip. Even in Cape traffic, if you are in the state of Massachusetts or not in the state of Massachusetts.
Right. I don't know if I'd drive down there on Labor Day or on Memorial Day.
But if you end up on the other side of the bridge.
Yeah. It's definitely worth the trip.
Airport Road, Hyannis, Massachusetts, Cape Gunworks. Go down, get some trigger time, see Toby, see the crew at Cape Gunworks, pick up something that you need, support local business, supports the Second Amendment, and that's how it gets done.
Well, Toby, you're a hell of a 2A advocate. I mean, everybody that listens to this, I would like to think that everybody knows who you are. A lot of people saw you at the Freedom Rally, spoke there. The rally at the State House, of course, the meeting that we just had. Amazing stuff. You're a hell of a speaker. You run a hell of a shop. you're a passable golfer.
Once upon a time.
I joke, right? Like I have any room to criticize anybody's golfing, but
I look good doing it, but the results aren't always the best.
That's all right. Always got the firearm stuff to fall back on.
right.
That's right. Yeah.
But
I'm not
really
going to be picked up in the senior tour anytime soon. That's for sure.
But really appreciate you taking the time coming on and
Absolutely
and sharing the time with us, Toby. Really appreciate it.
It's good stuff.
Anytime you guys call, I'm there. I always enjoy it, and it's always good to see you guys. It's always good to be around like-minded fellows, and we will have to get together on the golf course this summer for sure.
Absolutely.
Will do.
Toby Leary, 2A guy, owner, chief cook and bottle washer, like Jeff said, of Cape Gunworks down Hyannis. Thanks for coming on, man. This has been great.
Anytime. Thanks, brother.
So there he is, Toby Leary, the guy, man. He's pretty awesome. It was good seeing him on Sunday. So the two of us did his show on Sunday. We did a little segment of
A quick record.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. He was, so we made some allusions to it here, but actually after the annual meeting at Cyprian Keys, we were like trying to figure out logistically how he could do his show. We're like, well, let's do it back at the office. It's only a few minutes away. So we all kind of piled in cars and bombed it back up to Westboro and
It bolted back over and then just trying to figure out, does anybody have a mini USB cable? We need to plug this into that and get this going, get that going.
I got to plug this into here. But no, it came out really well. So we
it's always
set up at the goal office and he did his show from there and it came out pretty cool.
Yeah. But Toby, the folks down there, those are the people that, when I got into the Second Amendment community, I think it's like I count my lucky stars that these are the people that I get to hang out with and rub elbows with. And
oh yeah, it's like it's an honor to be able to talk to people. It's like that guy's so cool, and I got his number on my phone too. I can text him. It's awesome.
Yeah. So when people ask questions, like I got a guy for that, man. Let me tell you.
Yep. Absolutely.
But absolutely fabulous. But now we just got I feel like this is almost like a housekeeping procedure. But being that this is this is the first podcast being released of the month of April.
Yep.
That means I gotta get up on the drill of the month.
Do your chores, man.
So last month was the bill drill. Did the video for that. The video's up. So if you want to see how badly I shoot, by all means, you are welcome to view it.
Up on the YouTube channel.
It's up there. So for this coming month, we're going to do the Mozambique. Sometimes it's called a failure drill.
Yep.
The course of fire is, drawing from a holster on a shot timer, 2 rounds to the center down zero area, and then 1 round to the down zero area in the head box.
Yep.
So
in the chest, 1 in the head.
2 center mass, 1 to the head box. So part time for this would be if you're shooting from 7 yards, and this is the first time you do it, try to keep it under 5 seconds from the beginner standpoint. If you've done this once or twice, getting more comfortable, the target times start to get a lot shorter. So, depending on where you look on the internet, it says above average shooters should be, 2.5 seconds or less. And then, the real runners and gunners, competition shooters, they're looking at second and a half, just blazing fast. Yeah. But again, it's, balance of speed and precision. Yeah. So the round needs to hit, how fast you can go, the size of the target, that all starts playing together.
That depends on you.
It's a real easy 3-round drill. Again, 7 yards, draw, center mass, 2 rounds to the middle, 1 round to the head box, as fast as you can, keeping them on target. For 3 rounds ago, you can practice this a whole bunch, and it's a lot of fun.
There you go. So look up the history of it. This one came from Jeff Cooper, who heard the story and incorporated the Mozambique drill into the curriculum at Gunsight. And then it got the name of the failure drill because some cops from LAPD took some classes at Gunsight, found out about the Mozambique drill and wanted to teach it in LA. And the idea of the Mozambique drill was going to be a racist name. So when they were teaching it back to the cops, they had to come up with a different name for it. So it became the failure drill.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about it in the past. It had to do with like a mercenary and Rhodesian military.
Yes, and that was
a whole big story. But
right in Maputo, Mozambique, and and that's so Jeff Cooper heard about the story from there, and then incorporated it at Gunsight Academy. So
yeah,
anyway,
we'll
look it up. It's out there. It's a cool story.
Yeah, I'll try to have a video up as soon as I can. And then get some other little side projects and stuff to work on over the summer. So
right-o.
Yeah, there's your drill of the month. Try to keep it, clean and easy for everybody.
There you go.
But yeah, the weather's getting better. Get outside, do some shooting.
Yep, we're going to talk about training and hunting next episode. We don't have an update on the Senate bill, which, everybody wants to know, and that's fair.
Nothing yet as of the time of this recording, which is Tuesday the 9th.
Right. We do know that the Senate has, the conference committee has, against all better judgment, right, voted to take their deliberations behind closed doors. Big surprise there.
Oh, they kept it open long enough for them to all make their statements for the cameras.
Right. They all made They made their pat on the back statements for the cameras, and then
when it comes
we
time
better have it.
When it's time for business, so why don't we close these doors and not have anybody see what we're talking about here?
So there's that stuff, and that kind of it's par for the course for them. So anyway, more on that to come, I'm sure, but that's kind of where things are. So I guess that is it.
That's it for today. Thanks for listening in. Be sure to subscribe to the Goal Podcast and check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Goal Podcast MA, or on YouTube at the Goal Podcast, or on Twitter at Goal Update.
To join Goal, visit goal.org and click the Join Renew button on the top of the homepage.
If you have a topic you think we should cover, if there's something going on in your club or town, if you have a question for the mailbag, shoot us an email at goalpodcast@goal.org.
The Goal Podcast is a production of Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosting guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Goal, its staff, or affiliates.